It's trust that keeps the money in the bank. I think there was a lady up there asking why corporates aren't. It's the lack of trust that keeps it in the bank. Michael, you were saying that people don't really make that much of a difference, but surely, and the question to both of you, surely the arrival back into politics of Cyril Ramaphosa is a significant event, which more than any other thing that I can think of that's been done by this administration since it came into office, promises at least the possibility of trust being rebuilt, or at least understanding being rebuilt.
Cyril has to come off the fence and manage, and that means making some choices, which will inevitably mean becoming unpopular with some parts of the alliance. And it will be quite unpopular. But he has the skills. I mean, that is where he's cut his teeth in bringing people together, in negotiating. And he understands both sides of the debate. He's been in mining, controversial as we know, in London. So he is extremely well placed, but he will have to spend political capital.
Aubrey, do you agree with that? I mean, does he make a difference?
Yes. The question is for ill or good. When it was announced that he had been elected in Mangaung, I bought a lot of music on iTunes and a lot of books on Amazon because the rand strengthened. Clearly, the markets were of the view that his election meant that in his orientation, the ANC would be business-friendly and that the content of economic policy would be market-friendly too. That is precisely the thing that might put the ANC and the left in the alliance on a collision course. In other words, Cyril actually might find himself at the center of policy battles within the alliance. And you must remember, he was not the first choice of the Zuma camp. Motlanthe was. It's because of what happened with Motlanthe availing himself for election for the presidency and withdrawing from the deputy presidential race that he was elected deputy president of the ANC, which means this can go two ways. You have Ramaphosa, you have Gordhan, Mboweni, and others who will form a core of people who will push the framework that was adopted in Mangaung very hard, in the NEC and in cabinet. And to some people, that is a good thing. But it can also go the other way, that very core will be at the center of policy battles going forward within the alliance. Now, if we look at, let's say, the global economy, for me, there are two forces in the global economy at the moment. One force is represented by those who think that you can still take the world back to what it was before 2008. And those who think that the world cannot be the same after 2008. And that has implications for domestic economies like ours. Now, I eavesdropped on a conversation some members of the top six were having at a hotel in Mangaung. And for me, this goes to the core of some of the causes of tension between the ANC and business. This member of the top six said, the problem with business is that they think we're stupid and we do not understand the economy. Now, whether objectively they are correct about whether this is how business sees the ANC is one thing. That they believe it is not unimportant. So you have at least, in terms of my eavesdropping, one member of the top six who believes that business thinks the ANC are stupid and do not understand economic policy. Another thing is this. There is sometimes a gap between how we describe the market and what the market is actually is. For instance, if it is true that the market punishes failure, well, the 2008 financial crisis doesn't give us much evidence to that effect. The lesson of the 2008 crisis is that when companies fail, and the perception takes root that they cannot afford to fail, citizens will bail them out. And then they will go ahead and post the biggest bonuses in their history. That's what the 2008 crisis tells us about the market. And it seems to me that to bridge this gap between the ANC and business, one of the things that must happen is that the ANC must be prepared to hear those things it is not prepared to hear about itself. Secondly, business in South Africa must be prepared to hear certain things that it is not prepared to hear about itself. For instance, business must be prepared to hear that sections of South African business have a colonial mentality, that they don't see South Africa as a country to be developed, but as a market whose resources must be exploited. On its side, the ANC must realize that the global economy operates according to a particular logic, on the basis of a particular logic. And that logic extends to domestic economies, including our own. Now, to the extent that it may be tempted to flirt with radical pragmatism, it must bear in mind that whatever radical options it is considering will have to occur within that logic of the global economy and the domestic economy. Now, of course, the logic may not be correct. The ideas it represents may even have become so dominant that some see it as a religion from which they benefit. But the reality is that the logic is dominant, and you have to deal with it, and you have to be pragmatic in dealing with it. And for me, that means two things. The ANC will have to recognize the constraints that are presented by that logic and act pragmatically. But more importantly, even when there are constraints that are presented by that logic, it must be on a continuous search for options that maximize opportunities within those constraints.